Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
At first, we hit your gadgets with our state-of-the-art digitalized mobile studio with the debate on the road behind the wheels. Later, we launched our magnificent studios located on Plot 1A, Sewagude Close, Lukulinanganda, Machinde, Kampala, where we bring to you our must-watch shows like The Mighty Drive, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m., Hotline, Mondays, 7 p.m. As for legal matters, Twins at Bar, Tuesdays, 11 a.m. Wednesdays, 6 p.m. is Afro-Caribbean Link, where we connect Africa with the Caribbean. Voltage on Thursdays, 7 p.m., featuring a youthful panel. Interface with Dr. Kiza Besije every Friday, 12 p.m. with his call to action against injustices. Snap Talk, Saturdays, 6 p.m. with the trio. A must-watch, The Political Dice, Sundays, 8 p.m. with the duo that never stammers, and so much more. Watch us live on all our social media platforms. We are the Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Good evening, Uganda. The question of taxes has been a big one in this country. Very many taxes have been affecting various Ugandans. I can speak a few. There is the rental tax, property tax, income tax, interest rates on everything, literally. This question has not yet been addressed. There are some proposed taxes that are going to be coming. Well, we have actually been talking about these taxes. But as we know, Uganda, most of the things that are spoken in the grounds, they often come to pass. There is a proposed tax on the churches, on the tithe that you bring. How viable is this? And of course, with the increase of the taxes that Ugandans pay, is there a value for it? Are Ugandans receiving the services that are equitable to the taxes that they pay? How do we actually raise more taxes without affecting Ugandans in a negative manner? Remember, the World Bank and some of those international bodies cut the funding that was supposed to come to Uganda due to some particular reasons. But how do we cope as a people? Are we not just exploiting Ugandans, or we are actually, bringing them to pay or to do their duty of paying taxes? Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be the topic of discussion today, and I've already been joined by people from various entities. You know that every particular Monday we are joined by Honorable Joseph Ochieno. He is from the Uganda People's Congress, UPC. I also have Counsel Tugume Gideon. He's a lawyer by profession, and of course a gentleman who's very particular about the issues that are happening in this country, especially in the political scene. And lastly, definitely not least, Honorable Retired Major Pollar Awich, who is the Director at the National Resistance Movement External Affairs. My name is Edgar Matthew.
You don't say I'm also a counsel. Yeah. You forget I'm an advocate.
You have a lot of designations and positions.
If you put counsel, please. I'm a member of Law Society and an advocate.
He's a senior counsel and advocate with the High Court. He's also the Director for External Affairs at the National Resistance Movement. He has also been an ambassador and a diplomat representing Uganda in various spheres.
And the cadre now. And the current cadre.
Yeah, he's a cadre. When I say that,
and I'm adding.
My name is Edgar Matthew Karanga. As we're speaking right about now, Uganda Cranes is taking on Congo at Mandela National Stadium. So if you're around the area of Kireka, where you get it, you can just go there. The charge is 20,000 shillings. The boys have made us proud. I hope that Uganda, you can go and support them because the sports in this country is actually something that is very difficult. In other news, there are some riots that have been going on at Chambogo University, and of course police has tried to calm these particular protests. But why is it that Ugandans continue to protest literally every day? Isn't there another language that the government can actually hear? Maybe we shall hint on that particular issue. And of course last week we had some injuries that were sustained by Robert Chagulanyi Sentamu. He is the president of the National Unity Platform. And of course, many people have talked about this particular issue. But my question is, have we actually started to see election violence? Why is it that the police is meting or trying to tear gas and affect these particular opposition candidates, especially Chagulanyi sent, what is it that he has done wrong up to this particular moment as we enter in 2025, 2026, the political season? Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any question, just feel free to send us that particular question through our social media platforms. We are at Digitalk TV. That is on Facebook, at The Alternative Uganda, still on Facebook. But you can also look for us on YouTube. We are still at The Alternative Uganda and at Digitalk TV. On Twitter, at The Alternative Uganda, at Digitalk TV. You can send in some of your questions, comments. I'll be able to read them as we continue with this particular program. Let me allow my guests. I'll start with you, Honorable Ochieno. Please just give us your opening remarks.
I am always delighted to be here. Most Mondays when we don't have technical hitches, I'm always delighted to be flanked by Comrade Awich. And I like it that every now and again we have fantastic other guests joining us.
Yes, sir.
In the last 1 week, I was saddened by the scratch on Robert Chagulanyi's leg. I'm told it was a scratch, but clearly it looks like some overzealous state operatives threw very funny things at the man's leg, and those funny things are all part of my money, my taxes. So very saddened by that. But that said, I'm also saddened that in the last few days we've lost a legislator.
Yes.
People will need to know that Sarah Mateke is a fantastic, beautiful lady at 50, daughter to Philemon Mateke. Those are my only interests in the sense that she's a daughter to the Minister of State for Education in the Body 2 government. Mateke was an extremely popular guy, still remains very popular in Kisoro. He joined NRA as a matter of convenience, so the daughter followed and they're there as part of NRA. But these are solid UPC Uganda nationalists who did fantastic things. But so my condolences to Dr. Mateke and the whole family. But it's sad that Sarah had to die at 50. Turns out that one of the many legislators that you get, word about her from across the political divide, that she was a fantastic, energetic legislator, regardless of her political affiliations for the people of that part of the world. Sadly, though, that it would appear that her death could have been prevented. It's public knowledge, so I'll say it, that obviously she suffered cardiac arrest, as I understand it, but there was no immediate sufficient medical attention to cater for her. So I wonder, last week I attended a fantastic event at Makerere University Business School, and I was chatting with some young lecturers. There's some very decent young lecturers in this country. And one of them, at the end of it, when she officially joined UPC, but of course those are lecturers, they are public figures, but they'll vote UPC privately in future. The conversation was, how much tax do you pay? And in that group, one person came forward and said that they pay 900,000 Uganda shillings per month in tax. And I said, how much do you get from the state from Monday to Friday, January to December? And sort of you look through and then you realize that you pay huge amount of monies in indirect and direct taxes. And at the end of the day, you get absolutely nothing.
All right, we'll start on that discussion, sir.
Yeah.
Let me welcome you, Councillor Tugume Gideon.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me again. I'm so glad to have joined these gentlemen of the biggest caliber in this country, in the political arena of this country. So I'm glad to be with them here. Yes, I'm ready for a discussion. I will not talk a lot because, death is inevitable. Anytime a person goes. Because that one you have, at any age, at any time, we don't have control over death. Yeah, you can have control over what you have at home, control of your children. If you can, But death is inevitable. So we say sorry to the family of the late Sarah Mateke, but we're also saying that God gives and God takes away. The other issues that have been happening, like the Chaguranyi issue, it is an issue of a discussion to exactly establish what exactly happened. And so I think we have to wait for that. Then secondly, there are many issues affecting Ugandans, very many, very many, from poor service delivery, from, sickness, from the rest of the stuff. And so we say sorry to every Ugandan that if I have not done anything, at least to say something about what you're going through, then you really forgive me. But I would really fear that I really talk for that last person who is feeling hinge at this particular moment.
You're speaking from a negative light. Isn't there some things that are working on ground, as you're saying?
No, I'm just, every person has got his or her own way of seeing things, I'm just looking at the other side, which is the majority. But there are other things that can really move, that they are moving. But I'm just talking at a person right now who is not able to pay fees for the children. The person who cannot afford to have a meal in a day, a person who cannot be able to pay rent is the person I'm talking to. I'm talking about a person who lacks clean water, a person who right now is entering the house because of darkness in the villages, where the roads are completely worked upon, including even the Kampala. These are the people I'm talking about, not necessarily on the negativity. But if we don't talk about something that is not well done, then some people will never take time to find a solution for the people's problems. But there are some other areas.
Do you want to share with us those things that are working, to mention in like your detail?
Yeah, there are some other areas, like defense is working, for sure. Yeah, defense is working. The prison is working very well. Yes, but you told me to tell you what is working. The prison is very busy working. If you take a prison, they cannot chase away anybody. And that is the government institution that is very active. The police is working. Those ones on this, when you go and find those ones on the traffic police officers, even those one arresting, even those one tear gassing, they are very busy doing some work. So generally, there are some government institutions that are working.
I like the irony, Council. Senior Council, Pollar, which
you want the irony to go further. I saw social media where they were showing clergy with their collar, with the big stuff. They said, that is the only sector of the economy. Of course, this is a sense of humor. Now, I have heard my brother, the congressman, make his preamble. And I thought it was lengthy. I thought it would come in the debate. So, my approach to what you have given me as opening remark is to be brief. And I thought that, well, in my understanding, that's what it should be. Because if you put it in the discussion, 10, 15 minutes, then to me, it goes way out. But anyhow, I prefer to say, my opening remark is a look about last week, the activities as a director, the secretariat, we met the party chairman. We were about 9 or so. So we discussed, as usual, our way forward for the party, so that we fit in the roadmap of the Election Commission. Because the Election Commission has released. We also met on Friday with the Movement Caucus. As a director, I attended NRM Parliamentary Caucus. We also had, I attended Makerere an activity. So those are brief things that, and then of course the death cannot go unmentioned for the minister and the incident with the Honorable Chaguranyi. So the week was quite eventful for me, and we are now here. We hope for this coming week to have a peaceful week. But to round it up, that the freedom that we get here weekly to discuss, and not only in this studio. Oh, I also attended an activity in Mistil where I was with the General Mugisha Muntu, Honorable Alaska, and Honorable Winnie Kiza.
From the Alliance for National Transformation.
Yeah, it was, and many NUP members were there, and we were happy. We really ate together and discussed together. So I thought that is what the country should be. That we can be in Mistil with Noop, with the General Muntu and everybody else is happy and we part. So that's why I want to crown it up with this room.
As my producer is also looking for that question that was posed to him, that he can also answer that, but first conclude.
So I am just saying that like we are here every Monday and other discussions in other rooms, that is what a country is supposed to be.
Dialogue.
So that we talk freely, Congress talks his views, which is of course vital, and then we go back home and sleep.
Many people have an assertion that you dictate the grounds that they are supposed to talk about. Literally, you're dialoguing with weak people. You don't really dialogue.
Is he weak? Is he weak? We are not dialoguing with. Is he weak? Is he weak?
But
No.
you haven't dialogued with me. Yes.
So, so that is not true. Ugandans are Ugandans in their own right, in their own strength. If a Ugandan talks what he feels, what he sees, what he experiences, even if that Ugandan is illiterate, I judge the strength of that Ugandan from the objective position that he or she is articulating what affects him or her. That is my judgment of strength. My judgment of strength is not the PhD he holds or the hierarchy in a political party. If anything, the political party is supposed to hear from the feelings of the people. So they shouldn't think that the officials of political parties assume their strength from God. Their strength is from the people. So who is that weak Ugandan?
Let's wait and see.
Definitely not congressman.
Okay, our producer should project that particular question that was sent to Honorable Awich. If you have it, we can have it so that Honorable Awich can answer it, and then we can actually react to it and then move on. Yeah, so that question goes, while attending a function at Dr. Diana Twine's home in Luwero, the president said on his X-handle that UPC killed 300,000 people for supporting NRA. Records say that over 800,000 people were killed. As a former rebel, can Honorable Major Awich tell us who killed the 500,000 if Museveni confesses that UPC is responsible for only 300,000 lives? Also, Mr. Ochieno, is it true UPC killed the 300K as Mr. Museveni states? Thanks for the show. Honorable Awich.
First of all, I had no access to the X-handle of the president. I am not sure he said that, but if he said that, is that about the killing in Luwero, immediately after NRA took over, an independent judicial, a commission headed by judge of the highest court then, Justice O'Dare, I think by then it was Court of Appeal, because the Supreme Court is a product of the 1995 Constitution. We had two layers, two appellate layers, Court of Record, what we call Court of Record. It was High Court, Court of Appeal. Supreme Court came, I think, as a birth of the 95 Constitution. Council will remind me if I'm wrong, but I think that is it. So the highest appellate court then was Court of Appeal, where Dare was sitting. The idea of appointing a judge was because they wanted this independence. And Dare's investigations, through their methods of research which they had employed, came to this figure. So, no, and that is the authentic research that we put. Now, the other person who is saying there was additional 500, we go by the principle that he who alleges has the burden to prove. So let him prove that. But the record that we have, the authentic government record, coming from Justice O'Dare's report, puts this at 300 and puts the killing as being state-inspired. If you went to the methods of findings of the O'Dare, that was a method of the commission, either by testimonies, witnesses, or even actors who were there, who were alleged to have participated and were called. Others were given immunity, because many people were called, I think including Paul Mwanga. So, this is the position. That is the 300 that we have on record as having been killed in Luero. And these were innocent civilians. We're not talking of combatants who are legitimate combatants who can die, and because they're legitimately enrolled for that, and their government has another way of handling it. But this one, innocent civilians. So,
are you trying to demonize the people who lost their war because you are the victors, so you dictate how history is written? Are you trying to demonize the then state and the then government?
no, we are not trying to demonize, and that is why they appointed a judge, so that the judge makes an impartial inquiry and makes an, because you know the judges, why we think judges make an independent inquiry, because once judges have taken an oath, and we believe they stand by their oath, and two, judges have job security, and because that's why job security is given to judges, because when they exercise their impartiality, you don't threaten them with loss of jobs. Okay? So we expect that a product from a judge is impartial and unbiased. So you then therefore cannot talk of a demonization of a past regime when actually it was a judge. If you had appointed an ordinary political appointee, he could do whatever he wanted. He could come up with a finding the way he wanted. So the idea of putting a judge was to free ourselves off a person who would not act with impartiality, a person who would be working for a future appointment. This guy was already judged. Then he continued up to the Supreme Court and retired from Supreme Court and died. Did he retire? No, I think they did die in service or after retirement. I think he died in service. I don't remember well, but he died. But when he had attained the highest rank of the judiciary.
Okay, so we are trusting the judge. Let me hear from Honorable Joseph Ochieno on that particular question.
So just to confirm, Comrade Awich is saying that Mr. Museveni's specific 500,000 are baseless. And that...
Museveni says 300.
He
Somebody
said that
else said 500.
He said the state was responsible for murdering 300,000.
Yes, not, so that is what he said.
But
of 300 of how many?
He says that, the gentleman who asked the question says that the total, some records say that 800,000 Ugandans were.
And that's why I said,
and
he
he asks
who
who
alleges has a
killed
burden to prove.
who killed the 500,000.
So, okay. So, clearly, Mr. Museveni has been in power for 40 years. And Mr. Museveni was the victor of Luero.
Yes.
So on the basis of that, we presume that Mr. Museveni knows every corner of Luero, from Kapeka to those Semuto, those are the foreign places. So he knows these places. A future independent inquiry, not this NRA charade, should instruct Mr. Museveni to prove the 300 figures. I can tell you honestly, and this is with absolute authority, no 300,000 Ugandans died in Luero. Is it breaking news? It's official. 300,000 people did not die in Luero. Do you know the population of Luero in 1980? Just after the census, we had a census in 1980. So really, if 300,000 people died in Luero, there would be nobody in Luero today, nearly, basically. So that's one. Number two, I asked Mr. Museveni in 2005 that of the Luero skulls that he showed, that's another very inhuman thing, you know, playing around with dead bodies, whoever has killed them, you hang them for propaganda. Yeah? That of those skulls, how many were of Museveni's? How many were of UNLA? How many were stray bullets? How many possibly died of hunger, whatever the case. Yeah. But particularly those three, stray bullets, Mr. Museveni, and UNLA. How many? Mr. Museveni is yet to tell us that in this case, if 300,000 Ugandans died, for argument's sake, and is able to prove that, I ask Mr. Museveni, the victor of Luwero, how many he killed.
Because I think that's what the gentleman was also trying to ask.
So how many did he kill in the course of his journey to Kampala? So Ugandans also need to know that Museveni killed 100,000, but he was very nice. Although he was a victor, he killed less. So you should tell us. Or he killed 50,000 Ugandans in Luwero. Okay, Mr. Museveni, if you killed just 10,000, tell us. Okay, 1,000
Mention
Uganda
your
shillings
number.
from Museveni. Tell us, how many did you kill? We want to know. Now, were those animals? Were they birds? Were they humans?
You're a human being.
Were they strictly combatants? How many were caught in
Collateral.
crossfire? And how many of them were UNLA? Mr. Museveni needs to tell us that. Or else, Mr. Museveni started something which, for me, I had settled. I have said that we need to heal, we need to forgive, reconcile, and move forward. It's Mr. Museveni's NRA, Museveni, who fired the first shot in Luwero. So whom did he kill?
Okay.
Whom did Museveni kill? Who were they? In the Kabamba attack, how many Ugandans died there? How many Tanzanians died? How many? And in any case, what was Museveni doing in Luwero anyway? I started with my preamble with Chagulanyi having his leg broken nearly, by Museveni's firemen and the leader, political leader of opposition, the official leader of political opposition in this country. Interestingly, whose political base is actually Buganda. But Luwero, Museveni lost in Barara, North, in Nyabushozi, lost badly, not to UPC, but to DP, who are basically the controllers of Buganda.
Okay.
So how many did Mr. Museveni kill? The guy cannot give a figure. So my quick conclusion, therefore, is that according to Milton Obote, in his analysis of this nonsense about Museveni and Luwero, he said that Mr. Museveni is a pathological liar who only tells the truth by accident.
Yeah.
So if Mr. Museveni's 300,000 is a truth, it's an accidental truth, but he needs to qualify it. Or else I'll call him a liar on the basis of, and I'm not going to go into the figures of 1980 general election. People can go ahead and check the census of 1980. How many people were there? I suggest many of our people died innocently and wastefully. And almost certainly NRA killed as UNLA would have killed anyway, because UNLA were the governing forces, and they're fighting in insurgency. But I suggest the figure is much less. But that said,
As you conclude.
that said, no, this is a very important question because it's come back. Mr. Museveni says this in Diana Trini's place, and talks about Diana's parents.
Yes.
I lost a cousin in Luwero. My cousin was a newly trained police officer, post-Tanzania, and did not look like the crooked way in which UNLA guys are presented. Decent John Okuga, a police cadet in Luwero. Their units were overrun by Museveni's forces. Now, at least his body was reclaimed. Not many of those guys were reclaimed, so maybe some of them are those skulls. So I lost people in Luwero. In any case, we also know that we better wait. Museveni is 80 this week. We hope that before Museveni is 90, there is an independent national truth and reconciliation, including an investigation in Luwero. That puts NRA and puts UNLA, and we talk the figures. Because I also want to know how many of those unfounded bodies are which skulls. So it's a nonsense, really. Museveni knows that, granted, he had some children who ended up with him as his kadogos. Some of those children, parents have been killed. All sorts of creations have been made. We still want to know who these parents were. And in all those cases, he claims the parents of the children were killed by UNLA and not him. But I also know it's official. And Obote's notes on concealment of genocide, and this is a response to this gentleman. Read Milton Obote's notes on concealment of genocide in Uganda. You'll be told that the #1 targets by NRA in Luweero were granted UNLA. The #2 targets were UPC chairmen in Luweero. And UPC chairmen were not necessarily northerners. Luweero is the most cosmopolitan district in Uganda after Tororo, the then Bukedi. So all sorts of communities were there. So granted, they're different nationalities. But the Baganda, Banyarwanda, and all sorts of people in Luweero. But UPC chairpersons were the #2 targets. #3, the third targets of NRA includes a family for which I've got official record in Nagongera. A Japadola family that was targeted, and they escaped narrowly, were people of northern eastern extraction who were targets by NRA. So the Luweero scars, we don't know to whom it belongs and how many killed. That's what, meaning from my perspective. Okay. We need to be able to deal with those ones. Right. Museveni at Twine's place really needed to have celebrated Twine and said, this is a girl, whatever kind of stuff, and go. Bringing these silly figures is actually unfortunate. And Museveni talks about 800,000 people who died. I mean, those people who died in Luweero. You know, Museveni wants to call Luweero War Obote War. And you know, this Museveni man does not want to say that the northern war in northern Uganda, in which 1.7 million people either died, suffered in concentration camps, or displaced in northern Uganda, were NRA war. So who's fooling him? So the northern war is always called Kony War. And you know the funny thing, Joseph Kony did not exist in 1980. After 1990, I think Joseph Kony came up, I think 1991, 92, thereabout. Right. But the war that Museveni started in northern Uganda, he calls it cheekily an LRA war. So which is which? So now, guys, this is my position. I was a young student, but very alert, as you can imagine, coming from Mwiri. You know, 1980, we had multi-party elections, which Museveni lost. UPS had won it convincingly. Buganda had voted overwhelmingly for DP, except for some Mugisha in Mubende. Buganda thought Museveni was going to bring them into State House, brought them a little bit, they nearly tested a little, whatever. It didn't happen. Right now, I don't know, okay. You know, but the truth is that 1981 war in Luweero, which Museveni started, was an unnecessary war after 9 years of Idi Amin, and Museveni takes responsibility for that war. Okay. You know, Museveni takes responsibility for that war, and thankfully, as Museveni was fighting in Luweero, Dr. Semugeri was a decent leader of opposition in parliament. And between 1981 and 1985, UPC government, the party that I'm associated with, provided fantastic services across the country, including parts of Luweero.
Honorable Awich, because of time, I'm going to just stop you there.
Me?
Sorry, Honorable Ochieno.
Yeah, thank you.
Beg your pardon. Councillor Tugume, do you have anything to remark on that question? It was mainly sent to Honorable Awich and Honorable Ochieno.
I can also interject,
yes, you can
because
say something about
I'm here. And also for us who were a bit trained in the issues of military, together with him, is that a person who wins the law, who wins the war, is actually the one that kills most. Because in the war, you cannot win. You can in the war. In war, you can't win. Eh? That's you what know, they talk of propaganda, they talk of political education, they talk of what, but militarily, a person who wins the war is the person who kills the most. That is it. So, in that analogy, I think we shall know who won. But secondly, by 1980 elections, UPC actually won Luweero. If you go into records, it won Luweero. The whole of Luweero. So it means the supporters of UPC were more in Luweero than any other part of Buganda. Yes. So if there was kind of killing, I wouldn't see UPC killing its own supporters. That is another analogy. I'm just bringing up some issues that couldn't add up to the Obote killing.
The inconsistencies.
Yes, inconsistencies. Yes, and when you look also at the prominent people who were killed, were actually UPC. UPC leaders. So where a person has been killed and is a leader of UPC, how about the rest? How were they killed? So what is happening is that we should not always shift the blame. No, let us accept that there was dying of people. And shedding blood of Ugandans is unacceptable.
Yeah, regardless.
Every Ugandan blood matter. Okay? So you don't need to go and kill even 1,000, even killing what? No, you don't need to do that. We must avoid issues of killing people. That's why for us we are in civil disobedience, but we are not going to the bush. Because we know what happens. We know what happens, that people will die. So the actions of some individuals to go to the bush to fight a elected government without following the due process was bad. It wasn't a good idea, much as the later on one. Because you need to be patient in order for a country to move. Yes. We have been patient for the last 40 years in opposition, and we have not got arms to go and fight NRA because we want to take over power. Because some people would also support, and they also become like. So I think there are some issues that we need to avoid in life, and Uganda should never again go back to get that kind of. What actually has been happening is that Ugandan army has never fought a war from outside our boundaries. All the war, all the fighting, all the killing has been within, inside Uganda. So in actual sense, every military of Uganda that has been at war with its own citizens. Definitely. Any person who has gained, not even alone the Tanzanians. I'm talking in the terms of ROO something. RO, whoever gained any rank of having fought a war and having been courageous at fighting a war has not been fighting an external war. Yes, I'm sorry, I could not be. He could be here, but having something small here. They moved. So I have to be very careful not to annoy a military man. So the military in Uganda, and whoever even has gone to the rank of a general has gained that rank not because of fighting the war with the rest of the world, but fighting with Ugandans. Okay. And many Ugandans have lost their lives. Leave alone those in Ruero. We are seeing very many Ugandans dying. Even on the 18th and 19th on the road, see how many they die in Kampala.
54.
Okay, they're talking of 54, but very many.
Mulago received more than 100.
Yes, more than 100. Then you go to Kasese, those who died at once. Then you go to Mukura, those who were put in the whatever and were burned. Leave alone even those who go to northern Uganda. More than 2 million people are believed to have lost their lives in northern Uganda. You remember those who were burnt at Baronyo, and those were not foreigners, they were Ugandans being killed by fellow Ugandans. So there is a problem that we need to heal. There is a wound that we must heal.
Okay, cool.
And this wound, I'm concluding, this wound must be healed politically. We must sit together. When he was talking, he talked of meeting Muntu, General Muntu and others. General Muntu by 1989 was a commander. Yes, and is the one who was actually sending people in northern Uganda when things became bad and people were burnt in Baronyo and the rest of the staff. He was a commanding officer, I think. And the rest. So generally, the killing of Ugandans by the fellow Ugandans is caused by a question of politics, and which must be solved by sitting on the table, not through elections. It will not. So I conclude by saying that not only even the 300 President Museveni is claiming that died in Ruero that are so painful to Ugandans, but even other Ugandans who have died through unwarranted wars, warranted discontents, warranted fighting by UPDF, Uganda's army fighting against its own.
Or unnecessarily in hospitals.
Because I think we're going to stop there on that particular question.
Yes. But I wanted to clarify.
And because when you clarify, you also want to clarify. Okay, so let me give you 2 minutes to just clarify on that.
There's the issue of whether or not Museveni killed, and if so, how many. Museveni is not saying he did kill. Museveni was already a fighter. Now, there was a state of war. And if you wanted to know if there was a state of war, if Museveni was arrested, he would be charged for these offenses, those offenses of fighting. So, meaning that if he was caught and he would be charged, it means there was already an existing status quo. The status quo was war, and it was legitimate. And that is why he would be sued he would be charged for that criminal offense if he was caught. Therefore, the Museveni killing, which he documents, is found in showing the mustard seed.
Yes, it's there.
If you read showing the mustard seed, Museveni states which one he killed. What he killed were legitimate combatants. True, they are Ugandans, but these were Ugandans as adversaries in war. And that's why I'm saying if he was arrested, he would be charged. So these were legitimacy. And he documents in a
Showing the mustard
showing the mustard seed. We fought here, we killed this number of enemies. We fought here, we killed this number. We start so from Kabamba. We killed this, we killed. These were legitimate. And those are the ones he's saying he killed legitimately. And he's not even crying about the ones killed from NRA. The ones he's crying about are the civilians who were killed by state-sponsored killing. State-sponsored means an army battalion just suspects a village for supporting rebels and he kills them. UPC youth wingers identifies those things as supporters, he kills them. Museveni is not complaining about Nkrumah unit or Lota unit or Kabalega unit which get into contact and you are killed. No. NRA fighters who were killed, he has no problem with it. Those are legitimate targets because they were fighting.
Yes.
So the killing that Museveni did, which he documents in his showing the mustard seed, are legitimate killing in front lines, in all the combats, including where Saleh was injured and all that. So that is it.
Okay.
So why do you then saying how many did he kill? He has said it. He has written it.
I've got 30 seconds right to reply.
Okay.
30 seconds, very important, right to reply, because these are high-level conversations. In Milton Obote's notes, of course, Museveni wrote his mustard seed, which is now, we're going to get the 20th edition.
They are filtering it.
Yeah,
That's the thing. I was going to.
Obote wrote his notes on concealment of genocide in Uganda. Any journalist who hasn't read that, from beginning to end, is yet to qualify. In the notes on concealment of genocide, Dr. Obote reports to Ugandans that when Museveni's bandits attacked Kabamba, they attacked, we had just had elections, Tanzania, Uganda was just stabilizing. So these guys captured territory, UNLA was sort of almost mini ill-prepared. It took them 6 months to mobilize and organize. I'll just summarize it, mobilize and organize. But on the report, Dr. Obote said that when they made the first assault launch, which basically pushed NRA from the area where they set themselves, overran and the NRA bases, Obote said, and I really didn't really want to bring these things on television now, Obote said that the soldiers, the reports he got back, President Obote, the last elected president of this country, that the soldiers found torsos without heads. This is on record. So read notes, found torsos. And he said the soldiers, as well as the political leaders and well as he, were puzzled about the circumstances of an overrun area, and you find torsos without heads. Obote reports on his notes that the facts about the torsos became apparent in 1986 when Museveni spread the skulls.
So he kept the skulls?
Whatever the case, this is the important. So really, if you're talking about figures and who, no, areas that Museveni first occupied, UNLA on record found bodies of human beings.
Without heads.
Without heads. So it's that bad. These are things we try to hold back on.
And the heads found themselves.
Because these are very sensitive things. They're generally very emotive things, but they're also very national things. And from my perspective, Comrade Awich, for me as a UPC leader, I want to make sure that somehow, we don't go to the extremes and crash to the other end. You know what I'm saying? We need to have a national conversation. But no, that's what I'm trying to say. Museveni is no saint in this country.
Okay.
If you take Milton Obote,
Yes, sir.
Yoweri Museveni, Idi Amin, the three leaders who led this country, no, the least saintly of those three is Mr. Museveni, when it comes to the number of people who died under their regimes. And in any case, Obote's was not a regime, Obote was the government.
So, but
Political
I think
science will do
I've answered the question
Yes.
of how many has Museveni killed?
Yes.
I think I've answered it to the effect that I even used his own record of what he has killed.
Okay.
But what he has killed, he documents it battle by battle. Okay? I understand the emotions the congressman is in, but also I know that you have actually, in Langi you said, if you throw a tortoise in water, Langi believes that a tortoise will swim. So you have put the Congress in its best topic. His preference is President Museveni. I've counted the words, the number of times he has mentioned President Museveni, 52 times.
That's an exaggeration.
So you have given him his best topic. His topic
Comrade, which has compelled me to smile this evening.
His topic is Museveni. He has mentioned, I was counting, 52 times.
Okay, thank you
How
so
many
much.
times would he mention Obote if he was given an opportunity?
You know what Museveni and Semugere those days? Obote, Museveni and Semugere.
Let's go for a short commercial break. When we come back, we start with the issue of taxation in our second hour. These taxes are too much. Are they actually bringing in results? Are they used very well? It will also add in an element of the loans that we get on behalf of Ugandans. How are they used to serve Ugandans in the grand scheme of things? My name is Edgar Matthew Karuhanga. I'm still with Joseph Ochieno from UPC, Gideon Tugume, senior lawyer, and of course, Council Honorable Awich Pollar from the National Resistance Movement. This is the Hotline Show.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Hi Rogers, can I ask you something?
Shoot.
What does corruption mean?
Well, summarily, corruption is abuse of public power for personal gain or for the benefit of a group to which one owes allegiance. For example, when a public office is abused by an official accepting or soliciting a bribe. By the way, private people can be corrupt too, like bribing police officers to escape fines.
Okay. So exactly how does that concern me?
Well, do you pay taxes?
I guess, yeah. What does that have to do with this?
Everything. Because those taxes you pay are supposed to facilitate services you use, like water, electricity, roads construction, medicines in hospitals, name it.
Okay, that is much bigger than I thought. But it can be stopped, right?
Well, yes, it can, although it may not be as easy as it sounds. And here is the reason why. Corruption roots are grounded in our country's social, political, economic, bureaucratic traditions and policies.
So, what has kept it going this long? I mean, why don't we stop it?
Well, the main reason why it has been here for so long is because institutions are weak, either as a result of poorly defined ethical standards of public service, weak administrative and financial systems, or ineffective watchdog agencies.
What can we do to stop it?
At a national level, we must focus on strengthening the independence and effectiveness of public institutions that fight corruption. At a personal level, we must commit to never giving a bribe.
I promise I'll never give a bribe.
Well, that's a great decision you have made. Me and you now have to spread this message to all our friends. If we all do our part, corruption will be no more.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digitalk. At first, we hit your gadgets with our state-of-the-art digitalized mobile studio with the debate on the road behind the wheels. Later, we launched our magnificent studios located on Plot 1A, Sewagude Close, Lukulinanganda, Machinde, Kampala, where we bring to you our must-watch shows like The Mighty Drive, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m., Hotline, Mondays, 7 p.m. As for legal matters, Twins at Bar, Tuesdays, 11 a.m., Wednesdays, 6 p.m. is Afro-Caribbean Link, where we connect Africa with the Caribbean. Voltage on Thursdays, 7 p.m., featuring a youthful panel. Interface with Dr. Kiza Besige every Friday, 12 p.m. with his call to action against injustices. Snap Talk, Saturdays, 6 p.m. with the trio. A must-watch, The Political Dice, Sundays, 8 p.m. with the duo that never stammers, and so much more. Watch us live on all our social media platforms. We are The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
It is 8 p.m. Thank you so much for watching the Hotline Show. Let's delve into the conversation of today, the problem or the challenges of taxes. All the taxes that we have in Uganda, where is the value? I'm going to start with you, Councillor Gideon Tugume, on this particular issue. The state of taxation in the country, what do you think about the tax law, the taxes first that we have in this country, before we even look at the tax policies and laws?
You know, what is happening is ignorance. People don't know the type of taxes they are paying. And the problem is URA. URA has the mandate of educating Ugandans about the taxes, and they have not done so.
Yes.
There are no many taxes in Uganda, by the way. Because there is what they call a shilihord. Do they call it a shilihord? Where you don't pay taxes at all, not until you reach a certain amount of money, which you are earning. It's a threshold. Yes, I am. So, in the general truth of the fact,
I think it's
if I'm to talk, yes, if I'm to talk as a person who did finance and accounting, because I have masters in finance and accounting, that's what I first did. I want to tell you that there are not so much taxes in Uganda, but the problem that we have is that Ugandans they don't know how to keep books of accounts. What does it mean by books of accounts? When you buy something, you come and record in the book, I've bought a phone at 200,000. This phone, I'm going to sell it at 350. This includes the transportation, the salary, the rent, and the rest of the stuff. So when they are going to tax this phone, they don't tax the rest of the other issues that are expenses. They tax actually the income, which is less. The profit. They tax the profit. So they will calculate the expenses, remove them with the what, and then what is remaining is what they tax. If it is below a certain figure, they don't tax it. So people don't know. People are talking of ground rent. Ground rent is different from rent itself. Yes, because if you are owning a plot of land, which is on the government land, you have to pay ground rent, okay? And then the rent is what you pay you as a tenant. And all those people don't know.
But they are rental taxes.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to say. That all those taxes are viable. And they are actually legal taxes. But the problem is that Ugandans sell, you bring all the stock in the shop, you sell as you drop the money in the pool. And when you are spending, you spend without knowing where that money, the profit that you are spending. They don't even spend profit. They keep on putting in the pool, and when a certain person comes with a wedding card, you get the money from the pool of the money, you support a wedding. Some people get money from all the pool. You find somebody has bought a vehicle of 700 million, when in actual sense the business is equal to 100 million. So he doesn't know that what he has taken out of the business is either the capital, which would have brought back another item, or is spending the profit. So Ugandans don't know, they just spend. That's when they go on the party, you find somebody is a businessman, he's spending 100, he's saying, he's promising to give just free 100 million. But do you know making 100 million profits in the business? It is so big. You can't gain it. So there is a problem of lack of education and keeping of books.
Have they been
Yes, 95% of Ugandans who are in the business are illiterate. I have to tell you. They just get money by chance. That's why when somebody brings a shirt from China, after buying it at 5,000, he comes and sells it at 100,000 because he wants more profit for luxury, just spending. So there is a problem in the country. that we need to educate our people. And they don't want to employ people who understand this thing.
I get you.
You heard even among the taxes you are going to talk about, they are going to talk about the infreeze tax.
Infreeze is the system.
But they are calling it a tax, which is not. So to me, I don't buy an idea.
Educated these
No, the education department of URA is poor, very poor, because people don't know. You are supposed to educate them, and of how people can pay taxes. That's what I've been telling you. That some of the products that you brought in your shops, some of them you don't even need to pay taxes for them, simply because they belong to a down much lower threshold to be paid for the taxes. But because for you just bring money and put there, you don't have receipts. When you want to give a receipt, somebody pays you $1 million, you give a receipt of only 20,000. That's what has been happening.
Yes.
So how can somebody tax you? So this also URA is imagining, by the fact that they find the business running, by the fact they see your lifestyle, and they also charge you. That's why when you petition URA, they will say we have reduced your taxes from 100 million to 20 million.
Yes, we have seen.
Why is it that?
Okay.
There is no proper system of taxation in Uganda because of the behavior of Ugandan businesses. And it is not a bad behavior, but some people are illiterate and they don't want to learn.
Okay.
I'm sorry, people can be angered by my remarks, but I'm a truthful person.
No, you're honest, and to that extent, I can agree with you. But at least we can say Ugandans have tried to be tax compliant. Then my question to you is about this NSSF that Ugandans and some companies pay. Many companies don't pay that tax.
And that is it.
But there are those that actually pay these taxes.
Yes.
What do you comment on that NSSF? It has been mad with a couple of issues.
There is somebody who is supposed to collect the taxes at NSSF to ensure that every month the company is compliant.
Yes.
I worked for a company.
For me, my question is not about the compliance itself yet.
You are talking about
when the money
submission.
gets to that NSSF.
You see also it comes from the other issue I'm talking here about. Because from the product you are selling, there is an issue of 5%. There is an issue of 10%. 5% is a contribution from a worker. 10% is a contribution from an employer. But this employer is spending all the money, including the 10% meant for NSSF. But in the product that you are selling, there is inclusion of the 10%. You get me?
Yes, sir.
When we are calculating the costing, what they call costing, you cost the total cost of a product. This phone, when the manufacturer was manufacturing it, he made sure that whichever was a component in this phone is calculatable in terms of cost. So he's going to sell this phone, including all the costs, including even NSSF. Everything is included here. Okay. So it would have been better for an employer or a manufacturer to pay the taxes which have been included in the cost of the product. They don't do that. Okay. So there is that kind of, I don't mind the attitude. And you find people are supporting NRM. They are putting on a T-shirt of NRM. So that is also their escape of the taxes. So I will say, I will not pay taxes because I belong to NRM. When you talk, immediately calls the president. And the president say, Oyomureke, just leave that person. You see? That's the problem in this country.
There is no evidence to what
not me, I'm telling you, everything is political here.
Okay.
There is no, technical people, there is no think tank for people to sit and talk as we are talking.
There are some tax waivers, and we don't know the criteria, how people get these tax waivers and tax holidays.
You just need to
but let me come to you, Honorable Ochieno. Honorable Ochieno, this gentleman has commented on the ignorance on our part as Ugandans. I want you to look at the tax policy and tax law in this country. Does it actually favor the Ugandan on ground?
Why did you ask Comrade Awich that question directly so that I respond much later? Because for him he's going to say that, accuse me of talking too much. And you know.
In the preamble.
And he always comments on how to talk. But he also sometimes takes his time. But
no, for him.
It's okay.
No, these NRA guys, they always want to have their way. They've had their way for 40 years, and they think they'll always have their ways. No. But anyway, generally in principle, I just thought I would say that, well, taxation really is a very important subject because it's really through tax that basically states, generate,
Yes.
primarily generate revenues.
Yeah.
And so in terms of, we want to talk briefly about the systems that, of course, there will be direct taxes, which is part of what we're talking about now, and indirect taxes, and those are the taxes that we pay, including when I was going to get my Bugiso coffee, which is in my stuff here. I've been promoting local stuff, So when I go to a local shop, I get my Bugiso coffee, then I pay 10,000 Uganda shillings, 18% of that is value-added tax, and that goes to the pocket. So we pay tax in that indirect taxes. Now, but I think generally the way the conversation has gone, and because we now don't have time, I want to say that, look,
We have time.
the challenges we face in this country is partly, as Council has said, is because the tax regime in this country has been substantially, one, politicized, but then two, I think systems of how we've ended up with systems that never work, like it was being said. Part of it is basically, in this case, who pays taxes and who pays how much, has already been hinted. Our biggest challenge with the more obvious direct taxes, my argument has been, that's an ideological conversation, where we believe people who are left-leaning, like myself, who would normally tend to believe that taxes should be progressive, and that higher earners should pay a little more, and then the lower earners should progressively pay less, and that there should be a threshold, as you guys were discussing earlier, below which people wouldn't pay. I think a future UPC government, for instance, I would possibly put taxable income double the threshold to possibly up to 500,000 Uganda shillings to zero taxes from below 200,000. So in the very least, possibly 450, because it's got implications, that maybe up to 450,000 shillings, that that should not be taxable income if people are earning.
In Uganda, as we're speaking, it's at 250,000.
It's about 250, which I still think is quite low. And then beyond that, the next threshold would be possibly people who earn, say, 500,000 to maybe 2 million shillings. You could argue that maybe they progressively pay maybe 10% to 15%. I am generally a believer that the billionaires, and every other time we talk about billionaires in this country, when my not my friend, when someone like Bernie Sanders, whom I regard in American polity, talks about the billionaires in America. The billionaires in America are people who are richer than Uganda, the Republic of Uganda. So the billionaires in Uganda are really not average billionaire, the billionaire Awich is of today, because these are billionaires and they're fantastic guys. For me, I'd be looking at the billionaires of the Sudiras and above, and that billionaire taxes, people should be taxed, possibly in the top end should be 40 to 50%. Most of the Scandinavian nations do that, and systems work for them very well.
How about here in Uganda?
So I would perhaps go for a tax threshold. However few those billionaires are, I would tax them higher. And then progressively come lower and find people say, maybe do 10%, 15%, 25%, maybe 30%, and then to 50%. It may be a mixed conversation in terms of the percentages. But it has got implications, and it's important. That to me would be the fairest progressive tax as far as direct taxes are concerned, number one. And then number two, the point being raised about enforcement. In Norway, I have a relative in Norway who is self-employed. If you do not do your tax return, even if it is basically equivalent of 10 Uganda shillings and you can't account for it, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. To the penny. But guess what? These guys, you pay your taxes, their health services, top-notch. The educational services, top-notch. their transportation services top-notch. In fact, actually, they've now said, I think starting from this September, October, that public transport in major Norwegian cities is going to be free.
Yes,
something along those lines. So when you look at it from that, this free is not necessarily free from where people will be talking about, but that is what a national state is. That's what a family is. That's what a home is, upping the livelihood of people and cushioning communities. There are still millionaires in Norway, meaning real dollar and krona and euro millionaires, and they basically live their posh lives in yachts. I've had a privilege to meet one or two of them, and the interesting thing, as my colleague here talks about, some of those Western European millionaires, you meet them and you not actually know that they're very rich millionaires in terms of their modesty, how they come across and things like that. But that's a slightly different topic. So for me, I would take that with the question of direct taxes.
Okay.
Now, indirect taxes, I would also review and ask, for example, health facilities, education facilities, things that are able to mitigate questions of the environment, land, hospitality. How much? Is it 18%? This 18%, for example, VAT, which is very, very common, it seems to be working. But the thing of imposing 18% VAT on some of the most basic essential stuff, I think is possibly not right. But there are many other services, including major luxuries, which ideally should be taxed. Okay. Now, I'm bringing something controversial here.
Yes, please.
There is this thing about UK levying taxes on private schools. Now, surprise, surprise, this thing raised big issues there. But I said in the UK, your children will go to Oxford and Cambridge and Harvard of all the other worlds without necessarily attending private schools, just the way UPC did it those days. So then you'd say, therefore, that if you begin to pick some of these other services and that you're levying particular taxes to the patrons of this world, schools where parents pay £30,000 a term, you know, those guys can afford. And then you've got communities here that are struggling where 30,000 is a privileged wage for somebody's one annual wage for a family of 6. Okay. There's no reason why you don't play those things to levy. Maybe I'm boring a little bit, but I'm trying to say, in this way, you find that states are able to rebalance, in terms of their fiscal and taxation policies, to rebalance not only their economies, but actually to countercheck in the livelihoods. Like, because, for example, how much tax do we pay for a beer? You know, for me as Ochieno, I would levy higher tax on alcohol, you know, because those are really not necessities. And I would levy taxes on cigarettes. I would levy taxes on certain luxury stuff. But then there are certain things, including maybe basic transportation, even if it's private transportation. I would review those taxes, including the final point, actually. I've come in, and these people who do Uber and will enjoy my argument. Okay. That apparently that the Uber drivers pay these companies. I've given them free advert here. 25% of their advert.
20.
I have actually argued, is it 20? I've actually argued that these are foreign companies that reap quite a huge amount of money. And out of that, actually, the state could really do with lowering the amount of money that go to the user, meaning the end user, meaning out of the 30,000 shillings you pay between here and town, you know, how much goes to Uber and how much goes to the state. Okay. They should be able to review those things so that they're able to squeeze the amount of profit to this. But some of those are part of conversation, and the lawyers are here when these companies come to have this conversation to negotiate, basically negotiating for the rights to do business.
As I move on from that particular issue, because what you raise is actually very important, but I wanted us to look at the narrative that is among Ugandans that the rich don't pay taxes in this country. Many believe that the taxation or the tax burden has been left to the wananchi, the people who are doing business, the traders, and the folks with the money themselves. There is a way they evade tax. To what extent is this statement accurate?
It's a combination of yes and no answer. Yes, because there is a general perception that we pay too much tax. That said, even on the basis of what I've said, Uganda is amongst the lower tax-paying nation states. In any case, and Comrade Museveni, you're going to be very happy with the young Mr. Ochieno, him giving you free advice. There are many ways in which we could be robust and ambitious and innovative, creative ways by expanding our tax base, as a country, and make sure that we're able to generate reasonable amount of resources without necessarily being punitive. But part of the question, as my brother here said, is the question of enforcement. The other, which is also substantially true, which is almost criminal, is one in which the particular rich guys who are genuine tax evasion. Now, those tax evasion, the amount of money we lose in tax evasion is higher than, more than the amount of money that maybe the lower 30%, in fact, would be 30% of average taxpayers pay. So that's a huge amount of money. Number two, points raised. I know businesses where indeed the taxman, the URA guys turn up, and you're told, don't appear here. Phone calls are made and they don't appear. But I also
There's
know
also hinted on that.
cases where businesses that are supposed to be paying a huge amount of money, allegedly URA officials negotiate with these guys, and they review figures in which the reviewed figures leads to people paying far less than the others pay, and they share a little bit of the difference with public officials, which is part of the corruption thing.
Okay.
So that is hugely happening in this republic.
Let me come to Honorable Awich Pollar. Honorable, they've raised a couple of questions to you, but as you remark on the things that you've also noted down, please highlight on this issue of politicizing taxes. Many people believe that the tax hand is subjective in nature. It will go for the mouse, but it does not go for the bull. To what extent are these assertions true, sir?
Okay, thank you so much. Tax is an important thing, like especially for Uganda at this time, at a time when we used to read the national budget, and a national budget would run like a wedding proposal, where you say, car for the groom, catered for. Somebody has provided.
IMF.
Suit for the bride, suit for the groom, covered. Shoes for the... That was how our budget used to read. This one covered by Norway, this one covered by Denmark, this one IMF, World Bank. Now it is no more. Now we have to talk. It is now where boys are seen from men. So we have to stand up as a country and survive. And we must not only be surviving the crude way, but we must do it in a civilized way that we run a country. Therefore, the discussion on taxation is very important at this point. First of all, let me say that in the historical times, there was a common saying that no taxation without representation. That we are not going to be taxed unless we are represented. That is in Parliament. And this has continued to the extent that not a single tax, even on a pen, should be levied until there's... So we have continued a long time here. There are no taxation. So we have continued the administration, and that is why we keep having representation, and that is why Kenyans, for example, had issues because the Kenyans believe that the legislation the members of parliament were passing in Kenya did not reflect the will of the people.
Exactly.
So if there is any wrong tax being levied, look at your member of parliament, because it is them.
That's very true.
So I have talked about no taxation without representation.
Yes.
Also, I want to bring in this domain the aspect that nearly every Ugandan pays taxes. Because people tend to confuse a concept that big tax collectors like MTN are the taxpayers. MTN may be paying company tax. That is tax for their profit. But there's a little amount of money MTN pays. compared to the money that MTN collects through every airtime that it sells.
Yeah.
Through every. So we should note that not only big tax collectors collect taxes, but everybody, like Comrade Congressman was saying.
Yes.
Since morning, I woke up. When I woke up, I bathed. I paid water for the bathing water. I picked, say, yogurt from the fridge. I paid tax
The
for
fuel you procured.
that. The electricity for running my fridge, I paid. The electricity in the house, I paid tax. The fuel I put, I paid. So everybody pays tax. This should come out clear that Ugandans or citizens pay taxes.
Yes, sir.
Because people tend to think that tax assemblers, those who assemble taxes, are the only taxpayers. So I think I wanted to bring that clear. The other thing I want to comment about is what you talked of tax policy. I can't land on a document now and wave and say, oh, this is a tax policy of Uganda. But I can really tell you briefly what it is. A tax policy, ideally, is the philosophy a country wants to hold
Yes.
towards taxation.
Exactly.
So in this case, our tax policy, one, is to encourage production. In other words, tax people not to make it so prohibitive that whoever wants to do production cannot produce. The other tax policy has been deliberate to discourage imports.
Yes.
Please, let us produce our own things. Let us try to be self-reliant. So the tax policy is to discourage import. The other tax policy is to identify exemptions.
Which
For
is where I'm
example,
coming.
if you are importing things on medical, or if you're importing things on, say, agriculture, you are saved. So, briefly, this is our tax policy, our philosophical conception on taxation. Promote production,
Yes.
discourage export,
Import.
import, encourage export, and encourage production, and then identify exemptions. So holistically, those are our tax policy as a country.
Yes.
Now, because of this tax policy, then you go to the specifics. How is it therefore operationalized in specific taxation areas? I want also to talk about what you call about tax waivers. There's a lot of talk about tax waiver as to who actually benefit. I remember we were in Kololo in an NRM caucus, and this matter came up, and the Attorney General brought a law and read it verbatim. The law now is to the effect that it is not only foreign investors. All investors, even local investors, depending on the waiver, the amount of investment, and actually more of the time that you take. So these ingredients are taken in place. So therefore, everybody benefits from waiver.
Are you
And
sure?
like
Everybody?
Yes, the criteria is set under the law. Because I remember Kiwanoka read it in Kololo when we had this controversy over coffee. There was a controversy about the export of coffee, where some people tended to have been taken the monopoly of exporting coffee. So we had the caucus meeting in Kololo, and Kiwanoka read, I don't remember the citation of the law. Remember, a good lawyer is not the one who crumbs, but knows where to get. I can get it in given time.
Yes, sir.
So the waiver, that is a position of waiver. So investors should know their rights, should consult their lawyers, and benefit from this. The other thing I wanted to query, I heard you people talk about NSSF.
Yes, but before you delve into the SSF, comment on the politicization of this tax.
I wanted
tax
to, I am doing it, don't
Okay,
worry.
okay.
Just give me one more minute. You talked about NSSF as tax. Is NSSF a tax?
That tax body that receives that money that Ugandans save for themselves.
My understanding is NSF is
There is a certain
national.
invisible hand.
I understand NSSF to be the National Social Security Fund.
Yes.
The money that you said paid by the contributor and then the employer,
Yes.
I did not take, I don't know at what point it is taxed, but I thought these are savings of a worker, which he will utilize later. The philosophy is And this started with the communist move, because the communists were the ones particular about workers. That if you have this worker, is working at his prime age, when he grows old, he has no granary. Where does he go? So the state compels you to save so that you don't become a pauper on the street. So I wonder what you were discussing about taxation there. But I thought...
I'm talking about the money, because that money all belongs to Ugandans. How is it managed when it gets to the NSSF there?
But is it a tax?
It may not be necessarily...
No, I think it's actually not a tax.
But
And
it's not a-
Comrade
yes,
Awich
it's not a tax.
Comrade Awich is right
Yes.
that it's actually not a tax.
It's not a tax, I also agree.
But,
Why were you
but I
bringing
think
it in tax
maybe
discussion?
maybe in
Because
terms
this
when it
money
comes to
comes from Ugandans.
spendings of public funds, but maybe
Uganda.
yeah,
No,
maybe the context.
NSF is a saving
No,
of
you
a
see,
worker.
but-
Maybe
but-
something nearest to a
No,
taxation.
but you see, NSSF is a deduction.
Yeah.
Because that's why I'm looking
Yes,
at
where
it.
there is a deduction.
I think it's the
In accounts, where do you put it? It is
That's what
under
I'm trying to
deductions.
No, something
It's under
near to a
deductions.
tax if you want for an
We
employer.
can change the word.
What you want
because I
to-
think it's
No,
not
don't
what you
even.
get.
No.
NSSF
If you
is a
want
deduction.
something
It's-
near
it's-
taxation-
It is a statutory deduction.
Let him first speak. Yes, sir.
Tax goes to consolidated fund. NSSF doesn't go to consolidated fund.
Okay, let's change the wording.
If you want something around that, there's what is called pay as you earn. Pay as you earn is the money that is taxed for you. They said, how much do you earn
Which is
and
what-
how do you?
Which is what I was talking about.
So pay as you earn is different from national
no.
social
I
It is
think,
true.
Comrade Awich, Edgar may really have talked about the spirit of the fact, the second which we know, which is the more recent politicization of how much NSSF money was used and how, you know,
Let's speak about
So
the
to-
money that Ugandans...
Maybe
pay to
talk
the
of pay as you earn. You know, when we talk this, Edgar, we also make viewers learn. So if you give wrong facts, you distort the views.
Okay.
So the nearest to a worker that you talk about taxation that ends in consolidated fund is pay as you earn, not NSSF. NSSF doesn't go to consolidated fund. That is why they have this huge building, because the money is separate for the workers. It doesn't go to consolidated funds. Yes. So I wanted to clear that so that we don't distort the viewers. Now, so I have to clear that. Your question now that you are banning about,
Politicizing how taxes are paid. Some people will just call someone and the tax will be waived from them.
well, still I would say he who alleges has the burden to prove. Those who allege. But what I know is, like I tried to explain that Attorney General explained about the waiver. It is codified in law. It is provided by law. Now, if they hear say
Yes.
about somebody being made a phone call, I also hear the rumors. But I cannot, for example, do with specific, unless one of these guys here have to say on such and such a day, or even a month, to Mwesije John was waived. On such and such a day, Okello Peter was waived. On such and such a
You're
day.
speaking
So
like a lawyer.
otherwise,
Of course he's a
you
lawyer.
see,
You're trying
then
to-
we end up in
You're
gossip.
speaking as a lawyer.
We end up in gossip, in imagination, in what? But I know for the case of waiver which is provided for the law, it is there.
Okay.
Now, if people, of course it would be a bad thing if such a thing happens. One thing I know for a fact is corruption in the URA. Just recently, there's somebody, the IT department, who were charged in court. That one I can talk with authority because I can cite you a court reference file.
Yes.
In the case of Uganda versus, because it's a criminal matter, that one I can talk with authority that there is corruption.
Okay.
But now, how would you expect, how do they say that I hear
A waiver.
people benefit? If they do, it is bad. But I can't say I know.
So that-
because nobody knows that Okello on such.
Does council know a person called Patrick Vitature? I think he doesn't. He's not aware.
No, I know Peter
Yeah,
Ture.
what happened with his recent business? He had actually, the business had collapsed. And what happened?
That's what I said.
Yes.
You alleges us a burden to prove. Let them cite it. Let them cite it. Let them cite
yes, but it was waived. Leave alone that one. Do you remember the Hassan Basaja Baraba? How much? Was from consolidated fund. And
Hundreds
was
of
paid
billions,
to- Did
yes.
it come back? It didn't. Can we bring somebody else? Because we just
he
want-
said he needed an example.
Yeah, that is
You have
examples
given
I'm
him an
giving.
example,
Yes,
yeah.
those are examples
So
I'm
let him
giving.
respond
So
to
I'm giving now other people who are not completely
Precisely.
helped out. We have Sembore steel mills, completely gone. We have got Wava, including Wava television. What is it? Completely gone. We have got AVC, completely gone. What would be wrong?
Okay.
That the other one which waives the taxes for Patrick Vitatori and others cannot waive the
For those
taxes
ones.
for Sembore.
And yet that tax waiver also gives 500 billion to a
Yes.
dubious foreign company
Yes,
called Rocco.
including 300 billion to Rocco.
Let him
There you
respond
go.
to that particular issue as we come to you.
Well, now that they cite particular cases, maybe I have no facts about it. About the waiver of Basaja, for example. I mean, what was he dealing in? And
Okay, let's go.
I don't know.
Honorable does
You know,
not.
I like to talk with facts. Now, if you wanted me to concede, for example, I told you when I talk about corruption in URA, I can talk with that. I can tell John Musingu is in my OB of entire school. I can tell him, OB, there's corruption, and I'm glad it has come. If he asks me, Awich, why are you saying there's corruption? But there's a case of Uganda versus this.
Okay,
where
sir.
the man, the 870 billion, why are you doubting? So if I had this, I would say with certainty. I don't. And that's why I'm putting it on those who have.
All right, no problem. That means he does not want to talk about the hypothesis.
No, that I don't
but
want
my
to.
question
Yes, I don't
is,
talk about hypothesis.
but
I
my
want to
next
talk about
question is
facts.
actually also a hypothesis.
But
which
the
comes,
facts has also reality.
let me come.
That's a go term.
Let's
Also.
come to
Reality
the
is
other
also
issue.
a go term.
Can-
So when you talk of hypothesis and you don't want to, then how about the reality?
Council,
Actually, the discussion.
Senior lawyer,
No.
let me come to Council Tugume,
Yes,
and
yes.
I want you to comment on a hypothesis that he does not want to enter into.
I would not also.
There is also a proposed tax on these churches and religious institutions. It has already started to work in Rwanda, and we are thinking about bringing it. Okay, according to some of the things that we hear, they are bringing a tax against churches.
Yes.
How feasible is this?
Oh,
tax?
but any income is taxable in Uganda.
Is
What
that
is the teeth? Is it called the teeth in the church? How
Tithe.
different-
Tithe.
Tithe, by the way, tithe. What is it? Is it an income? Then it should be taxed. Of course, if it is less than 250, it shouldn't. But people are collecting billions of money. So you should pay tax. What's wrong with paying tax? It is even biblical, by the way. Paying tax is
Give
biblical.
Caesar to Caesar.
Yeah, it is biblical. Why don't you pay tax? Why should we, Pastor Bujingo, sleep in huge amounts of money and tomorrow comes I cannot pay taxes? Why? When Gideon Tugume, who is working for 1 million, is paying tax. Why? Yes, you should pay. There is nothing wrong. By the way, in Uganda, we still have a problem. That where there is a tax, where tax would come from, they are not taxing them. They are just taxing this small. You know, we are paying only VAT. We are not paying so much taxes in Uganda. No, we don't. People who are supposed to pay taxes are not paying taxes. They are going free. And I think that is not the problem of individuals. No, it is the problem of the state. Because the state cannot finance its operations with less tax. That's why we find ourselves with huge debts. We have now gone to more than 100+ trillion in debts. And that is because of completely low tax base.
Okay.
So we need to tax. We need to pay tax.
For the
And somebody
churches.
should not cry. Yes, they should not cry. For them, when they get that money, where do they put it? Is it not in their own pockets? Is it not in other things? You pay.
But
Pay
is
taxes.
there a way you can actually implement such a?
No, why not? Why not? Because every money that we pay in church is collected. By the way, in Church of Uganda, where I belong, for us, when we collect money, we have got 60% that goes up, that goes to the parish. Then from the parish, they also cut, and 60% goes to the diocese, to the subdeacon. Then from subdeacon, then another money goes like that.
Okay.
Then we should know that if you have collected 100%, pay such an amount of money.
No problem.
Yes.
Let me
Why
come
don't you pay?
Let me come to Joseph. There's a question here from a lady. She doesn't want to be told her name. She says 18% VAT. Why? With 2 question marks.
Yeah, it's too high. It's too high, and 18% VAT on a cup of tea, 18% VAT on a local trip down to an essential facility about a young child. It's a lot of money. So value-added tax, and in any case, it's possibly not arbitrary. People have also argued that in some cases people have paid tax double. Because basically as it is allegedly double value-added tax. But the expert is there. No, I would review, as I said, that VAT should be lowered, number one, but also number two, VAT should also be relative. That it should not be a standard 18% everywhere. That maybe, VAT on sugar, you pay a certain amount, and possibly VAT on soap, you pay equal amount of money. But maybe VAT when you go to that posh hotel which is built on
Exemption.
That funny hotel which is built on golf course, built on our waters, which is killing our environment. So if you go to that posh hotel, the VAT should possibly remain 18%. And if you're paying for average sugar somewhere in Kisasi or or somewhere in the corners of Budumasaka, you should pay 10%. So I totally agree. But
I was going to ask you about the question I asked you
Yeah.
with the church and religious institutions. Do you concur with his analogy?
it's a very interesting question, and it's a very interesting observation. And I was thinking about it actually. When I look at the mainstream churches, some of the traditional mainstream churches are struggling. When I look at my average Catholic church in Gongera and I see how the priests struggle, that sometimes once in a while we have to very informally take to them for them food, and you see the kind of thing that they actually do. Meaning a congregation in Agongera, the collections at the end of the day on a Sunday, maybe for over 2 services, it doesn't reach 100,000 shillings. And you see this big church that was built by these missionaries long time ago, and then you see the heating, the lighting to everything, and then the roof which is coming down. It's huge. So this is a very interesting topic. So for me, taxing that money from Nagongera is neither here nor there. In any case, you're giving me an opportunity to continue saying this that way. Part of what the diocese has actually done is now to create a Toronto diocesan grouping in Kampala where people who earn slightly more, are able to make contributions there. Now, that said, when you come to my average All Saints in Kampala, and you see the amount of money that comes in down there, it can be very tempting. But again, All Saints also did their major refurbishments. Tomorrow I'm going to be did I say All Saints? I talked about Christ the King, and then I go to All Saints. I'm going to All Saints tomorrow, and then you find those churches. Then when you go to the examples that my brother is giving here, these guys quite make a huge amount of money. Now, most of that money, if you take beyond the congregation and take beyond the infrastructure, and then you reconfine those amount of monies to the individuals in whose pockets this money, and I don't want to talk about individual pastors or owners of these churches, it becomes very interesting that maybe some of these things could be arguable. Maybe a robust conversation should take place where we look at monies as banked and per church, and then you say, well, if a particular church banks $1 billion shillings, is then subject to review. But knowing the corruption that Museveni created and he perfected in this country, people are going to begin, including religious leaders, are going to begin putting these monies on turn them into mini pillows. So those are some of the problems. Okay. So no, I am mixed on it, particularly for the reasons that I've given. My experience in the traditional churches, I think by and large they're struggling. But some of the more modern, robust churches, and I'm saved myself, so therefore I visit churches across. There may be cases here and there. I'm yet to be persuaded by the arguments for this. Right. Really, why we're going here is partly because Mr. Museveni had been spoiled by the Bretton Woods institutions who brought him the tiny rollers who brought him here, and the World Bank monies. That has now stopped for whatever reason, and is now very actively looking for money. So the guy is now madly looking for money that is going to tax anything and anybody, so long as he's not taxing himself and his family. What I'm suggesting very quickly,
the church leaders are beneficiary when somebody is given a vehicle of 700 million from taxpayers' money. Why don't you pay taxes?
But the robust conversation I'm talking about is that I'm actually beginning to ask whether or not these are how we should be going, particularly those are monies which are given to these people without my consent. And in any case, some of these people get these vehicles and they go ahead and begin to campaign for people who break our people's legs here in the streets of Kampala, having broken many more legs in Luwero.
Right.
But let me say this.
Just to
conclude. I think the conversation on taxation is this, that this should give us opportunity to review how we've ended up here. He talked about 100 trillion Uganda shillings. How did we end up here? We need to look through, as we are discussing Luwero, we need to review. In the last 40 years, how much money did we borrow from World Bank? How many public houses did we sell from Bukoto Flats that UPC built for you guys? How many banks did we sell to ourselves that UPC built for yourselves? How many railway stations and buses did we sell? And how much of that money went to where? We need to be able to do that. And then after that, the tax that you pay, what does it do? That's a conversation with my young friends in MOOPS the other day. We pay taxes and then give the privilege of a quarter, Mabati thieving junior minister who cannot even spell her third name,
It's okay.
And then we spend 4 million Uganda shillings to transport them from Kampala to Namamve.
There are some few questions to Honorable Awich. This gentleman is called Edward Okori. He said, Major, which be schooled, it's not Langi, but Lango, everything. Then there's another question. It says, what's the criteria for tax holidays? I think you've already answered that. This one is coming in from Kamoga Franklin Gooding. Thank you so much for watching us. He's watching us from San Francisco. He says, it's unfair for people to just give government their money. Isn't it a problem of capitalism you are facing today?
Yes, I've had the question, but the other Lango thing, I think it takes his view, is fine. I go by whatever he suggests. I'm not particular about it. About question of capitalism, but let me also say my thinking about
it's the next question that you're going to answer. I wanted to first respond to this one, then you can talk about the church and we can conclude.
Church?
Like the taxes.
So you read the question.
He says, it's unfair for people to just give government their money. Isn't it a problem of capitalism we are facing today?
No, but I'm the one who first started by saying, for a long-held principle, that no representation, no taxation. I wanted to bring that background to show that you just don't give government your money. For example, I'm not represented, they don't tax me. I brought that to give that background to say you don't give government your money anyhow. So you must be represented, your leaders must represent you and discuss and agree and tax you. So that is it. Well, capitalism, I don't know its depth of understanding about capitalism, but by far it is distorted. But I think let's take capitalism, for example, to mean a state of the society, economic society, where free hands into the economy, as opposed to socialism where you have state ownership in the production process, state factories, state this, state that. So if you say capitalism, of course, capitalism would actually protect its taxes because the capitalist wants to make profit. So if you're talking from a capitalist point of view, he wants to make profit. So he would want to minimize taxation. It is now the state, the capitalist state, that instead want to extract from the producers. But of course now we juxtapose it with if you're saying Uganda is a capitalist country, by private production, private hands as opposed to state hands, then here it takes you to policies, and we have tried to list some policies, tax policies. So that is the substance.
So now comment on the religious institutions
You
being
see,
taxed.
what is this road called? This road in
Lukuli.
Lukuli.
Lukuli Road.
You see, I want to say that this is, in society is dynamic. you cannot even be sure that after 100 years this road will be there. This road may not even be there. It may die, and they put either a flyover or move this road to another place. So society is dynamic and in all aspects changing. With this dynamicity of society, a law always comes to address a mischief. A law always comes at a particular time to address a particular occurrence. So if people have been in churches where are involved, I mean open and getting money and all this, and it occurs in society for a long time, then people come to address it. Say, by the way, this thing is happening now. What do we do? Okay?
Yes, sir.
And then that is when, remember, no taxation without a law. No taxation without representation. So, equally, laws are not casted on stones. Even the Constitution of the United States has been changing. Therefore, the law about taxation, the law about the church would of necessity come at some particular time, a point in time.
Yes, sir.
And this is the time. So because of the dynamicity of society, because not long time ago, there were only three religions here. There was Catholic, Anglican, and the Muslim. When IMF brought in privatization, people thought privatization would end in property. Once you privatize the economy, even the head is privatized. And that is why we saw churches mushrooming everywhere. I live in Akret Estate in Nansana. From the estate to the main road, you get six or eight churches. There are more churches than shops along the road. You get possibly 3 shops, but 8 churches. 8 churches, 3 shops from accessing Oima Road from the estate where I am. Therefore, it should not surprise anybody that at a given time T, the society is addressing itself to the money for the churches.
Okay.
So it's just appropriate. It's a question of the society is there. So nobody should raise a defense like, since when are we taxing churches? Since when? Society is dynamic. Even this Likuli road in 100 years may not be there.
So
therefore,
as things change, we should also
things change. So time has come to address this. And a law comes to address a mischief or to address a rising circumstance. The current circumstance is that churches have thrived, churches are many, churches earn income and in big numbers. So how do you address it?
Give us your parting shots, sir. Because it's actually accurate in this country. More churches, less businesses. Give us your parting shots, sir.
But some churches are businesses too.
My parting shot is that I'm happy to meet my Congress brother and my friend Tugume here. And I just like to say that this is the spirit NRM wants. Generally freedom of discussion. We share ideas. So for those who are watching from abroad, please don't be deceived that the country is in hell. This is how Uganda is. And I can assure you, not only in this room, if you find this discussion at this time in Kampala, maybe over 30 of them. So thank you so much.
And they shouldn't be surprised if I went out and my leg is broken. They shouldn't.
Actually, you should be surprised. You
Don't
should
be surprised.
because his leg is not be broken.
So you said it is a what? Cut what? So yes. So viewers, I again saying that don't be surprised at anything that might happen, because the tear gas would be outside there, waiting for Tugume to be, handled properly in that manner.
So that's
how
we are raided here.
Yes,
one time,
that's
yeah.
I remember even the CEO was arrested, and I think Mumbeje is the one who survived.
No, she was also arrested.
Bambi.
No, she was also arrested on camera.
Can you imagine?
So she's always on camera without saying any word, but she was also arrested. So anything can happen in Uganda, including having a discussion of this nature. And when we go out, then my land friend, for him is rate free, and others are hauled up and taken somewhere. It can happen. Don't be surprised. Then secondly,
Yes, sir.
the problem of Uganda is dubious expenditure. We spend a lot, which we don't earn. From the few taxes that are paid by few individuals in Uganda, including the 18% they are talking about, it goes into the hands of the few, who are not productive for the country. The office of the president spends every day 2.8 billion. That's money that can build the school in this country. That's the money that can build the hospital in this country. But it is spent. I don't know how. I don't know by who. It is spent. So it requires us now to go back and scale ourselves down from dubious expenditure, unnecessary expenditure, and unnecessary borrowing. You go borrowing everywhere. You go to China, you borrow. You go to where, you borrow. You go to whatever, you borrow. And all these debts have got interest. So there is a problem on the country. And these are the issues we need to talk. When we talk about this, we are not talking as politicians. No, we are concerned citizens. That where are we going as a country? Taxes are not enough, but the expenditure is too much, and the debt burden has become too much. So before we try anything else, what we need to do is to stop these people. Sir, you have done what you could, but you have failed, so it is hard time. You already
they have accomplished something.
Step aside.
It's okay.
Step aside.
Yeah.
Because failure is a big
These guys should step aside.
It is the people to tell us.
No, but we are the
Free and fair
people. But we are people.
Let's listen
Are
to
we
Honorable
animals?
Ochieno.
We are not animals, brother.
Mr. Museveni is allegedly 80. Many people argue
it's
that he's
beyond that.
maybe slightly over 80.
It's beyond
But
that.
whatever the case, in 30 years' time, Mr. Museveni will be possibly too old to see the figures on our balance sheet as a nation. So Mr. Museveni should do us a favor and just let go. But on the conclusion of this tax thing, really the argument is really about not only the purposes, but really how it's spent. The general agreement is that basically we should pay our rightful taxes. The position from UPC perspective is leftist and progressive, that it should actually be progressive, that there should be, the lower threshold in any case should be raised high. But people who earn a lot more should be able to pay in progressive a lot more. But that after we paid our taxes, this NRA guy should tell us where they took our trains, where they took our roads, where they took our schools. Imagine in Kampala, this guy just breaks Shimoni TTC and Shimoni Primary School. I'm still traumatized because I used to go down there and visit people in the 80s. I know a teacher who down. So basically, what our tax dollars do, our tax shillings do. And in any case, it now appears that we collect this money, including the tax in those churches. People should not get excited that we're going to tax churches because we're going to build roads. Nagonga Road, we're still waiting. It's not going to build hospitals because we're still waiting for Loboa. It's not going to create jobs in the north, instead because we're killing jobs using attack sugar, where we're spending 300 billion shillings, your money. And as I said, this Rocco Construction is a private company getting 500 billion Uganda shillings from Mr. Museveni. So Mr. Museveni, as you settle with our trainers, you should know that Ugandans are watching. For me, I've forgiven you, but there will be a temptation in future to make sure that we try you to explain the circumstances under which you give a foreign dubious company 500 billion shillings when people, including your own ministers, are dying from basic curable diseases here in Uganda.
Thank you so much, sir. This gentleman is called Honorable Joseph Ochieno. This one is Council Gideon Tugume and Council Honorable Major Pollar Awich. Thank you so much for everybody who has been watching us. Those who watch us from as far as the United States, Middle East, and the people in diaspora, thank you so much for watching. It's always a privilege to have you right here on the interface. I want to thank every man, woman, and child who has been watching us. Thank you for the people who send in your questions, your comments. And remember, we've been streaming on Facebook and on YouTube, so you can go back and watch this video on YouTube without any buffering or any technicalities. My name is Edgar Matthew Karuhanga. We shall see you tomorrow at exactly 8 a.m. The Mighty Drive returns with myself and Miss Farida Bikovede. Good evening, Uganda, and God bless all of you.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.